All right, boys. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Alex Pereira, who this past weekend, in front of 20,000 strong at MSG, Madison Square Garden, in our hometown, the three of us, New York City, he finished Israel Adesanya by TKO at 201 in round number 5. Excuse me, the 201 mark of round number 5. Mark, let me start with you. What was your take on Pereira getting it done late over Adesanya? What was your reaction?
What a fight. What a story being told between these two guys that may not be over as of yet. I will save the main thing I want to discuss for last, which, spoiler alert, it's the stoppage. But this was a great fight. I enjoyed it the whole way through. I loved seeing the clash of technique between these two and the different styles in their kickboxing. I loved seeing Izzy walk that tightrope and seeing Pereira bounce back from almost being finished in the first round and him tough it out the way he did. I loved seeing the grappling get mixed in. It was a great, great story of a fight. And honestly, through 4 rounds, it looked exactly how I said it would look. It's really exactly how I had envisioned it. Like, it's just what I thought we'd see. I was even on my way to getting the Izzy 49-46 prediction right until everything turned, which would have been dope because I nailed Hooker round 2, Weili round 2, and Dustin round 3. Frankie doesn't count. So, would have been a hell of a card if I could have nailed the 49-46. But anyway, it was going great until it wasn't going great. Izzy said that he did hurt his foot on that spot where Pereira checked the kick and he stumbled backwards, and that once it was hurt, he couldn't really feel it that well, and it was kind of dragging, and that's what made him suddenly be, unable to escape and evade against the cage the way he had been in the prior 4 rounds. But one way or another, he gets clipped. The whole fight changes, and even if it didn't get stopped there, maybe it's a 10-8 round and the fight's a draw. It could have gotten very interesting scoring-wise if we saw that thing continue. But it was stopped. Alex Pereira does it again, stopping Izzy in a fight that he was losing. And it just feels like he somehow has Izzy's number. But to get to the stoppage now, I hated it. I hated it so much to the point that it almost ruined the entire fight for me. And like I said, I was really, really enjoying the fight. And then I just feel like I got robbed of an ending. Like, give me Pereira battling back in a fight that he's losing and truly dropping or badly wobbling Izzy so he's on Queer Street, and the fight getting called, and I'm so impressed. And what a story it is. Or give me Izzy somehow weaving and a couple more don't land and he finds his spot to slip out to the side, or he manages to clinch. And who knows what happens from there, and he survives, and we go to the cards, and we're talking about the scorecards now, and I'm so impressed by Izzy surviving, and who knows who actually wins on those cards. Either of those things would have been great, and it would have made it a great fight. Instead, I get neither of those things, and it just feels like we got kind of robbed of an answer. And I have had plenty of debates with people since this fight happened who thought that it was a justified stoppage, and I'm sure there's going to be a million people giving me shit in the comment section when this one gets posted about, oh, you must want Izzy to die and blah, 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 blah. But I will die on this hill because I hated that stoppage, and you're not going to convince me otherwise, and I'm going to give you multiple reasons why. And for what it's worth, I've spoken to 3 fighters in this time period. I don't know a million. I've spoken to 3. All 3 of them hated the stoppage. So factor that in from a fighter's perspective.
Yeah.
Number 1. It is Izzy's 25th MMA fight, and he has never been finished one time. And he showed you plenty of times, specifically in the Kelvin Gastelum fight, how good his chin is and how deep he can dig in spots like that to survive. Number 2, he is moving his head. He is literally weaving his head. Yeah, his hands aren't up, but he is weaving his head back and forth. That's not a wobble. No one wobbles like that. He is swinging his head with an up and down, side-to-side motion, weaving it because he is still mentally in it. I'm not saying that he's not hurt in the moment. I'm certainly not denying that. He's hurt as shit, but he is in the fight. If we stopped fights whenever guys were hurt, we'd have about 1 million different results throughout the history of MMA. he is conscious of the shots that are coming, and he is weaving his head, trying to survive, trying to find a moment to clinch or to escape or whatever else. And point number 3, it's for the damn title, man. It's a fight with an enormous story going into it, and if you're going to take Israel Adesanya's title from him, you know, you're the ref. You're the person who gets to make that choice of, you know what, the title's on this man's waist, and I'm going to make a call right now that's going to put it on someone else's waist. You better make damn sure that Izzy has lost that fight and that the title should be changing hands.
That's a good point.
You need to wait, and you need to see if he drops or if a shot badly wobbles him and he now looks like he doesn't know where he is, which is not what he looked like. You can't just take that belt away from a man who's still weaving his head and who's able to look right up at you and say, dude, I'm fine. What are you doing? So I hated everything about the stoppage. Would Pereira have put him down 10 seconds later? Maybe. Maybe he would have. And what a damn story that would have been if we got to see that. And what a more definitive result and changing of the guard it would have been. But we didn't get to, and we'll never know. So that's my take.
Let's bring Omar in. Omar, give us your reaction to the fight overall, as well as your reaction to how that fight ended.
The fight was great. And I think I also had it 4 rounds to 1 as what I thought was going to happen. That seemed to be the way it was going. And yeah, Goddard steps in with the number 1 bullshit. I was not happy with it at all. And I think the thing that, and I started thinking about this afterwards, this is the same guy that let Kelvin Gastelum drop like 4 times in his fight against Izzy. Kelvin Gastelum went ragdoll at least twice in that fight, and Mark Goddard let it go on. Eventually, he did stop it once Kelvin Gastelum was like on 8 different sides of Queer Street. Izzy was still on his feet. Izzy never at one point dropped, and when he did drop, he dropped because he stumbled, not necessarily because he was cracked in that moment, right? He was fucked up. No one's going to deny that he was not doing well in that moment. He was definitely hurt. He had definitely been rocked. But I don't know. That wasn't a position where a fight, in my opinion, should have been stopped. I do feel like if this was a boxing match, there might have been more of a
rules are totally
argument,
different.
right? Mm-hmm. If this was a pure boxing match, but it's not. And Izzy was definitely, in my opinion, still in there for whatever that part is worth. Like Mark said, another couple seconds probably could have been completely different. Probably could have been exactly the same. We could say the same thing about the first round, too. A couple seconds later, and Izzy could have completely knocked out Alex Pereira cold.
Oh, my God.
The first round, though, that's just the game. This ending of this fight, though, is just it's nonsense.
Yeah, the end of the first round wasn't anybody's fault. It wasn't Goddard's fault. It was just the clock was done. Yeah. And if there was, I think, 5 more seconds, I think he would have knocked him out.
He needed one more good right hand.
Like one more, yeah. Pereira was out on his feet for a moment. And, yeah, man, that's why I'm not drinking whiskey tonight. I'm drinking red wine because I'm sad. I'm sadly drinking my red wine.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to you guys. When it happened, and I think, Mark, you immediately more quickly messaged our group and said that you did not like the stoppage. My initial reaction was like, that was really on the bubble to me. But the thing that really clinched it for me, and I have rewatched it, of course, and seen the highlights over and over again. I was leaning more and more that I thought it could have kept going. It could have, maybe should have kept going. The thing that clinched it for me was seeing Adesanya on Helwani kind of talk through it. Because Adesanya is one of those guys where he's just a truth teller. Like, he just tells it how it is. And he just doesn't give a fuck. So he has built up so much credit with me that when he says something like, and it's true that, like, it's not just about the bobbing and weaving and that he hadn't fallen yet. But he pointed out that when Goddard stepped in, he immediately looked right up at Goddard and was like, what are you doing? No. And I was like, yeah, he's right, man. He's right. And then he pointed out, which I forgot. I mean, who would remember this? But that Goddard refereed his fight with Gastelum. And I was like, fuck, yeah, Gastelum was way worse.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think that refs sometimes I don't think it's the first time this has happened. I think sometimes guys are refereeing a fight where one guy is known for power, and they get so concerned about if something big happens, I have to save so-and-so from this power. But, like, if that same exact exchange, exact in every single way, same amount of impact on Izzy, same reactions from Izzy, everything, happened with him fighting Sean Strickland, I do not believe for a second that fight gets stopped. I think it's that he's standing there and he's like, oh, the power of Alex Pereira, I can't let him keep getting hit. And that's not how we should be reffing. Like, it's about what Izzy is doing, not about you're scared of if Pereira hits him big one more time.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar point of, I think it also is a factor that Pereira's power, it kind of like, it precedes him in the fight, meaning like it gives him this sort of like thumb on the scale in those moments where he presents so much potential danger that it causes the ref to jump in earlier to protect the fighter. Which is kind of, you could say that, Goddard is trying to do his job in the moment. He's trying to do his job to the best that he can, saving Israel Adesanya from unnecessary brain damage. I mean, let's just be real here. And I thought you were about to make a slightly different point of saying that if that fight was flipped around and it was Adesanya damaging Pereira.
That too. Oh, that too. Yep.
I could easily see any referee waiting because Pereira is such a giant oak tree of a human.
Also a great point. I agree. I don't think it would have been stopped in the reverse scenario. I agree.
God damn it. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
I do not like it.
So what do you guys think? I've seen a lot of people, by the way, real quick, I have a funny feeling we're going to start to get some comments on this video of that our love for Adesanya blinded us. For this stoppage. But to be fair, I have seen very split. A lot of people saying that it was an early stoppage, not the best. And I have heard a lot of people saying that it was kind of fair.
Yeah, I've had a lot of arguments. And Izzy's not even one of my guys like that. Like, I don't have a blind love for Izzy like I do for a Charles Oliveira or something like that. I mean, I fuck with Izzy. He's cool. I like him, but...
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's shift now to talking about rematch or no rematch, because this is a very interesting dynamic between these two fighters. So on the one hand, if it was just pure UFC, you would say, like many other champions, the precedent has been set that if a guy or a girl defends a title this many times, and I off the top of my head, how many times has Adesanya defended? Maybe 5 times, 6 times?
Yeah, I think about that.
Maybe. Once he loses, especially in a fight where he didn't get dominated in this fight. He got caught. He got finished in the 5th round, but he was winning the fight. Adesanya should get an automatic rematch. But the interesting wrinkle to this dynamic is that they have fought twice before in a different combat sport, but it was a combat sport. It wasn't baseball. And Pereira won both those fights. And the second fight, he knocked him out cold. So do you guys factor that in? Omar, let me start with you this time. Do you factor in those previous kickboxing bouts into whether or not they should rematch right away?
Personally, no. Those kickboxing fights don't really mean that much to me. I thought Izzy was doing really well up until he got messed up. As far as what's next for them, I don't know if I would do an immediate rematch right away. To be honest, as much as I hate Izzy having lost, it does open up the middleweight division quite a bit now, with a little bit of interest in how these other guys would stack up to Alex Pereira. Because the thing you got to wonder now is, Alex Pereira followed this kid, but how would he actually do against some other more maybe ground-based fighters? Guys who are not going to just stand and kickbox with him, guys who are going to implement a ground game. I mean, if you look at Robert Whittaker is a very interesting fight for him. I know right now he's matched up with Paulo Costa, but my point is there are other fighters, I think, in the division that would be very interesting to see what they could do against Alex Pereira. I don't know if you do a rematch right away. The problem is I don't know if anybody else is as exciting for the casual as far as selling and things like that. And everybody else pretty much has something lined up. So I don't think we'll see anything until next year. But when we do, I would imagine whoever wins the Robert Whittaker Paulo Costa one is probably going to get the next shot.
Nice. That would be sick. Mark, what about you? What do you think?
I think it's got to be an immediate rematch. Personally. I think the story's there. I think the buzz is there. I think you want to capitalize on that. I do think Izzy deserves it. Same for me. I get it. It's 3-0 in their actual fighting career, but the kickboxing fights don't factor in for me. It's the guy defended his belt 5 times. To me, that's enough that you should be getting an immediate rematch, especially same scenario. It's funny, him and Usman, same scenario, winning the fight the whole time, finishing the 5th round.
Yeah.
But, yeah, also for kind of what Omar said, except I think that's why it should happen, is that Whittaker and Costa don't fight till February. So, A, you got to wait if you're going to give it to whoever wins that fight. B, say it's Whittaker, right? That's probably who I'm going to pick in that fight. And you say, okay, Whittaker, we're going to give the title shot first. We're going to have Izzy wait. Whittaker might very well handle Pereira. Like, he might just take him down repeatedly. And then you lose your chance to do Pereira-Izzy again. So I think you don't want to do that. I think you want to get one more. If Pereira wins again, then you can say, oh, who's going to beat Pereira? And then you are able to set up a Whittaker fight or whoever. So I think you want to strike first on that rematch.
You think a guy like a Whittaker would be a more interesting matchup than Adesanya for Pereira? Or do you think he would just get squashed?
I'd pick Whittaker.
I'd pick Whittaker
over Pereira.
Oh, I'd pick a lot of these guys over Pereira.
Really? Why? Tell me. You talk about this.
Izzy handled him on the ground for an entire round, and Izzy doesn't even have ground game.
This is one of those Ngannou gone moments where it was just not something that Izzy does in his game, and yet Pereira showed a vulnerability to it. I think Whittaker kind of trounces him all over the ground, if we're being honest. We do have to put it out there, though. I love Whittaker. He just had an interview where he was talking about the size of Pereira. And he's like, this man is massive. I've stood across the cage from Israel Adesanya. I know how big Izzy is. Izzy's not small. Izzy's a big dude. And he made Izzy look tiny in that cage. And he very well did.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a weight bully.
Yeah.
He's
I would imagine that, like,
giant,
Izzy's
man.
never really seemed to crack 200 for a fight. And it seems like Pereira on consistent occasion is over 200 pounds when he goes into that cage.
Well over.
Dude, you've seen that photo of Pereira standing next to Dominick Reyes in a training room?
Yeah. Like his
He makes Reyes look small.
Yes.
Yeah.
The guy is massive.
Yeah.
That'll tell you one of two things. Either Pereira is too big or Reyes is too small for a light heavyweight. One of two things.
He doesn't seem like he's too small.
Yeah, he doesn't seem it.
And we'll get to him.
Pereira, I think, is just one of these guys. Some of these guys just have bodies that are able to shed weight. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, he shouldn't be able to cut to 185, but somehow he does.
I wonder how much longer he's got, though, because that's not forever.
It can't be forever, man. It can't be. I mean, he does get pretty gaunt for his weight cuts.
Yeah, he does.
He seems like he's more of a natural 205er, which is why
I
he's
would
so
imagine
fucking
so,
massive.
yeah.
He's massive, man. Which is why I kind of balked at your like immediate taking Whittaker over Pereira.
Yeah.
Because I
get
think he would really dwarf Whittaker. Whittaker's, is he even 6'1"? I don't even know. I don't even think so.
I think he's like 6 foot.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, man. And
Yeah,
there were moments in the clinch where Adesanya was clinching Pereira and tried to like pick him up and like didn't and like couldn't because Pereira's so huge.
Well, Izzy was also playing a Muay Thai game with him. He was playing a kickboxing game in the clinch with him that he did. He doesn't play that shit when he fights other people. He was doing way more hand fighting, way more bicep control, way more knees to the body than he normally does. There were moments in that fight where he was playing into the kickboxing game that him and Pereira have had before. We could argue whether that was the right way to go or not, but it was very different than what he had done in the past with other people.
Yeah.
I do want to say I have loved how Izzy has been handling this loss.
He's the man,
Like,
dude.
He has handled it like an absolute pro. I love his whole mindset. And I still believe he can take this belt back. If he had 5 more seconds in round 1, like we said, he would have had a round 1 knockout. So he's certainly capable.
Yeah, man, absolutely. You're absolutely right. He also said towards the end of that Helwani interview, he was like, I think Helwani asked him, like, have you felt that pressure relief as other fighters who have lost titles have said that they felt? And he was like, no, not at all. He's like, it's still there. Everyone wants to fight me because I'm Israel Adesanya.
Exactly.
And I was like, you're the fucking man.
Speaking of Ariel, do you know what always confuses me? Whenever he's on Ariel, they at some point will broach the topic of how his name is actually Adesanya.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if it is, why don't you tell the UFC that?
Why
do you just let them announcing you as
Adesanya?
Adesanya. Like, why don't you be like, guys, my name is Adesanya. Announce me as my name. I don't understand it.
Yeah, you're right.
It's very strange.
I think Usman does that to an extent because sometimes they say his name Kamaru, but sometimes I hear like Kamaru.
Kamaru, yeah.
Buffer says Kamaru when he announces him.
He does.
Anyway, getting off topic, we have a huge fucking show.
Yeah.
Well, this fucking fight was amazing, and it fucking ended in such disappointment. Congrats to Alex Pereira. Speaking of names, by the way, real quick, the entire UFC broadcast team struggling with his last name the entire night. I think they said they pronounced his name 4 or 5 different ways.
I agree.
I heard Pereira, Pereira, Pereja, Pereira. And I'm like, guys, just ask him. Just like
what we know what it is. He has said multiple times it's Pereira, and
he's
if
like, call me Pereira.
That's what Anik says. But when I'm listening to the broadcast, I think that I'm like, why doesn't John Anik be like, hey, guys that keep saying Pereira 100 times, his name is Pereira. Just say Pereira. Like, why doesn't he tell them? Why does he just let them keep saying it wrong? I don't get
It's the easiest way for Americans to say it. Just say Pereira.
Really. Like, you don't even have to try.
But it's way funnier listening to DC fuck up his name. Like it's so much funnier listening to DC say Pereira.
Well, that's how Michel says it. Michel Pereira or Pereira, I think he goes Pereira.
Does he? I think he's Pereira too.
Oh,
But he's Pereira. This guy is Pereira. Like, there's not even a roll the way he says it.
Which is interesting because he doesn't speak a lick of English and he has to use a translator. So you would think that he would say his name like a super Brazilian way.
Yeah, it's strange.
I wonder if he's just
sounds rough.
But from day one, that's how it's been since his debut.
I wonder if he's just like, I don't care, just say Pereira. Anyway, let's move on. Because there's plenty to talk about from this stacked pay-per-view. In the co-main event, Zhang Weili grabs her title back, her women's strawweight title back, this time from Carla Esparza, defeating Esparza by rear naked choke at the 105 mark of round number 2. An overall very impressive, very dominant performance by Weili. Omar, let me start with you this time. What was your impression of Weili getting it done, getting it back, getting the gold back around her waist? What are your thoughts?
Not surprised at all. Esparza should be given her credit, though. She made the first round competitive. A lot more competitive than I thought it was going to be. The second round came out, though, and Weili looked like she had just turned on a switch. And eventually got her into essentially like a back-mounted crucifix. And from there, kind of snuck in a modified guillotine.
Yeah.
A very weird position, but only one that I think works if you have that brute strength that Weili has. And she does. And she did. And it worked. And it was terrifying.
Yeah, man. It's amazing. Mark, when you get done coughing, you tell us your thoughts on Weili.
Sorry. Yeah. She's pretty good. That one went how we imagined it would, I think. She is too damn good and just not a good matchup for Carla Esparza. The physicality and the athleticism that Weili brings in there just kind of made her an impossible puzzle for Carla to solve. And it certainly played out that way. Weili was in control nearly start to finish. I mean, Carla did have a couple nice like scramble moments, but nothing that she could sustain or actually keep control, and Weili puts her out with a choke that you don't see every day, just, again, relying on sheer power. So she is a scary prospect right now for any of these women to have to face, and she becomes the 2-time champ.
You know, I feel like Esparza deserves some props. I mean, she tried to hold her own, man. And for a girl who has never been known for her stand-up skills, I thought she actually held her own more than a lot of people are making it seem like. So props to her, man. She'll be back. She's going to win again very soon.
It's a weird one. She kind of like held her own while getting dusted at the same time.
First, like I said, the first round was competitive, but something about that second round made me feel like almost Weili wasn't. I don't want to say wasn't trying in the first round, but was almost like taking the first round off to sort of gauge and manage what was going on and what she needs to turn up, when she needs to turn up. But the second round, she came out guns blazing, and it really showed a difference in the power.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. So what's next? Let's start with Esparza, and then we'll talk about Weili. Let's talk about Esparza, where she goes from here in the women's strawweight division. Mark, you got a name for us?
So I think that there are kind of three. It's weird to not start with the title fight because I kind of have to. Can I start there?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I think you pull the trigger on Weili versus Amanda Lemos. I think you don't want to go back to Rose right away. She's already fought Weili twice. She's coming off the loss. I think you let her have a fight. You let this title reign possibly breathe a little bit before maybe you do end up doing a third fight with Rose. And I think Amanda Lemos is a perfect opponent right there. Similar powerhouse to Weili. I think that's a perfect fight to make right now. So the reason I had to say that first is because if you take her out of the picture, I think you're kind of left with three girls in Rose, Carla, and Marina Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. And I think two of them should be fighting each other. And honestly, I don't think we're going to match Rose and Carla up again this quick. So it's kind of like one of them should fight Marina Rodriguez. So whichever one that is, and I know it's a rematch for Carla, but that was a very close fight. So I don't hate it if they went that route again between Carla and Marina. So I think one of them goes with Marina, and whoever doesn't out of Carla and Rose maybe has to fight Zhang on Yan, considering she got that big win over Dern. She's kind of nipping at the heels too. So that's kind of how I would shake out the top of that division.
Okay. Omar, any other thoughts or ideas for either of these two strawweights? Or where they go?
No, I mean, realistically, strawweight right now, the women's strawweight division is pretty pretty jammed up. There's not a lot of movement or options you really have at the top of this division. So everything Mark said, I pretty much second, because that's pretty much how it has to go, I think, at this point.
Yeah, man. Yeah. All right, boys, then let's move on. Congrats to Weili for getting the title back around her waist. Excited to see the next time she steps out there and competes, because she is incredible. All right, speaking of incredible, in the co-main event of the evening in the lightweight division, a highly anticipated fight between Dustin, the Diamond Poirier, and Iron Michael Chandler. And Poirier got it done over Chandler in the third round and finished Chandler by a rear naked choke, the official time coming at 2 minutes of round number 3. Mark, let me throw it back over to you first. Give us your thoughts on the Diamond notching another win on his record. He mentioned on some interview that he, what did he call it? The violence triangle or trifecta?
Mm-hmm. It's so accurate.
Because all the guys who were like, I'm the most violent, exciting one in the UFC, yep. He has finished all of them. Gaethje, yep. Chandler, and who else?
Eddie Alvarez.
And Eddie, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. It's a great comment by him. And throw Conor in that mix, too, if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah, what a freaking fight. No one is surprised that it was a great fight. There's another one that I think we kind of nailed to a T. I want to say we all took Dustin. I can't remember 100%.
I think so.
But yeah, I said Dustin may be in danger early in that fight while he tried to get a read on Chandler's explosion in movement, and he was. He got hurt early, got clipped, had to kind of push through that. I said all in all, I thought Dustin's boxing technique was going to be too good, and that he would just have an advantage there that would start to play out, and that when he could back Chandler up against the cage, that's where he'd hurt him, just because Chandler's not as good when he's not out in open space. That happened in round 1. He almost got him out of there potentially if he had a little more time. I said if Chandler would ever wrestle, it would change the whole fight, and boy, did it ever. He took a dominant round 2 after Dustin nearly finished him, at the end of round 1. He came out and bounced back beautifully by remembering he has that wrestling in his pocket that he should use. So all that kind of saw. What I did not see is that this thing was going to end by submission. I did not see that one coming. If you told me somebody was going to win that fight by submission, not like they're not capable. They both have submissions on their resumes. They're both skilled down there. But if you told me that fight was ending by submission, I would have said no fucking way. So that was impressive. What a damn job by Dustin to pull off getting to the point where he got that submission. From the way he shifted his weight on the takedown to kind of just float, end up on top, to the way he took the back, to the way he finished. Just a massive, massive moment and W for Dustin Poirier. And we already know this, but what a friggin' dog that man is. I mean, he might be the poster child for, that fighter is a dog. He just is that guy. You cannot out-scrap Dustin Poirier. I don't think it's possible. If you can't tap him, you can't win. It almost feels like that's the point that we've reached with him. He is that good in a firefight.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you don't finish him, if you can't catch him, if it ends up being a slugfest that goes out of the first round, then he really has a great chance. And also, to your point, he really showed off his jiu-jitsu, which is very good. Yeah. Not only getting the sub over Michael Chandler, but all of round 2 defending the submissions. And Chandler had his arms wrapped around his neck, hunting for that neck a few times.
Yep.
And unless it's against a super world-class guy, super high-level guy, like an Oliveira or like a Khabib, to be honest, it also goes to show you just how high-level those two guys are. That once Khabib got Dustin's back, he found a choke right away.
Yep.
And Omar, let's bring you in here talking about Poirier's finish over Michael Chandler. What were your thoughts of the fight overall, and of the finish in the third round?
Fight was great. I love watching Dustin Poirier strike. I think his boxing is top tier. His management of distance when people are against a cage, I think, is some of the best in the UFC. It doesn't matter what weight class it's in. Not a lot of guys are able to keep a guy stuck on the fence, continue to strike, and also still move out of the way of getting hit with big bombs. Those Hail Mary haymakers that a lot of guys throw up against cage. I also did not see a sub coming. I thought the scrambles were very, very interesting because it kind of went to show that Dustin Poirier, even though as good as a wrestler as Michael Chandler is, Poirier is no stranger to wrestling and to grappling. I think a lot of people forget about that because of how often he stands, because of the whole Khabib thing and the Charles Oliveira thing. But it was good to see Dustin Poirier kind of give a y'all must have forgot performance when it came to that stuff, because I feel like with all the wins that man has, people still weren't giving him the credit that he deserves for what he's done in that division.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about where these guys go from here. Let's start with the winner, Dustin the Diamond Poirier. Mark, we will find out where he is now ranked in your rankings, I'm sure. Or maybe he won't be a huge riser or faller because he's still at the upper echelon of lightweight.
Yeah, he's got nowhere to move. He's Islam's the champ. Charles is 1. Dustin was 2, and he stays at 2.
Okay.
But yeah, one of Dustin Poirier or Charles Oliveira needs to fight Beneil Dariush. I think that absolutely needs to happen. If Dariush is not fighting one of those two men, I think it's a travesty. I really don't know who I'd rather. They're both so fun in different ways, those two matchups for Dariush. And then out of Poirier and Oliveira, whoever doesn't get Dariush, I really don't know who they would fight at this point. They've already both beaten Gaethje. They've both beaten Chandler. Obviously, Poirier just did. So I don't know. Like maybe Rafael Fiziev? I'm not. There seems to be not like a perfect answer there. And I've even heard rumors of Gaethje and Fiziev. So if that happens, then even more so, it's like, well, who the hell does Poirier or Oliveira fight? So I don't know. It's a little. I'm curious to see how that plays out. But one of them's got to fight Beneil Dariush for sure.
Omar, any thoughts on Poirier's next opponent or who it could be?
Poirier would have to be Dariush or Oliveira at this point. I would prefer Dariush just because I don't think we've seen that one yet. And I think the stand-up that Dustin presents and the ground game that Beneil presents, very different from Oliveira, but almost just as dangerous in its own right. So I think that'd be fun. I'm not against a rematch with Charles Oliveira at this point. I don't know if it's still too soon or not.
Yeah, it feels so soon to me. I don't know that I'd go that route already.
I will say really quick, I saw a call out from Mateusz Gamrot for Michael Chandler. And I got to say, I don't hate that. Not even a little bit. That is a fight that Michael Chandler, I would be picking pretty confidently. And hopefully he can get that done. But I think that fight is guaranteed fireworks from beginning to end.
Yeah, because Gamrot, he's had been flying up the rankings until he ran into the most amazing Beneil Dariush that we've ever seen.
Facts.
And so coming off of a loss, that would kind of make sense. I think if they wanted Chandler to kind of stay in a bit of a more high-profile fight, maybe they would give Chandler to Fiziev. Even though Fiziev is like winning and winning and winning, like Michael Chandler is still super high-profile, which would be huge for Fiziev. And would still be big for Chandler. If he got a win over Fiziev, it would get him right back like into the conversation of the top of lightweight. Mark, your thoughts?
I kind of think Chandler might end up being the Conor McGregor guy at 170.
Yeah, he's been calling for that.
He's been calling for it for a while. My one hang up is that, and I've always said this, that I don't know if I can envision Conor accepting a fight with someone coming off a loss.
Right.
Just because of his ego. But he knows how exciting Chandler is. He knows how much that would sell, how much they could talk. I could see him accepting it. And I could see the UFC pushing for it too, because they love Chandler. They know that he's always good for a show. They know that he is a star, if not greater star potential type guy. So if they did match him with Conor and he loses, all right, boom, we got Conor back. But if he beats Conor, it's like, boom, Michael Chandler, megastar. You know what I mean? So I could see the UFC pushing for that. I think I'm kind of down to Chandler or Jorge as my guesses for who Conor fights. But if Chandler's not going to be fighting Conor, then I agree. I think he may have to look a little bit down the line and turn back one of these young guys, and Gamrot certainly fits that bill. Either that or this rumor, and we've mentioned it on here before, of the potential of the UFC signing Eddie Alvarez and giving us a trilogy fight between him and Chandler, which would be fucking awesome as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah, give me all the popcorn for that fight.
Hell yeah.
Donald Cerrone, just for reference, he was coming off back-to-back losses going into his fight with Conor.
Huh. All right, fair.
He lost to Tony. Well, that was not really a terrible loss. It was when he like blew his nose and like his eye filled with blood.
I remember that.
Right.
And then his next fight, he got TKO'd by Gaethje.
All right, that's a good point. So maybe Conor would take it. Maybe he would.
That'd be great. It'd be great to get Conor back, right?
Chandler Conor feels the most like the fight where, like, when I envision it, I'm like, yeah, that's the one that's going to happen. I don't know why. I can see that one at 170.
Like, getting Conor back though at this point is just, it's never going to be the Conor that like I fell in love with. You know what I mean?
He's a different guy. He's a different person. He's a different fighter.
Of course not. Yeah.
I'm just never going to be that excited, I think, anymore for it. I'm going to watch it. It'll be fun. But it's not the same, bro.
Yeah, the aura has left a little bit. The magic.
He's just become such a monstrous dick face that I just it's so hard to be that kind of fan anymore to him, you know?
You just don't like that he shaved his beard, bro.
Bro, he needs to get that beard back.
The sad thing is it's a really good costume. I totally knew where that was from as soon as I saw it too.
What are you
it's
talking
a really
about?
good costume, but
Yeah,
he
what?
looks.
What costume?
He shaved his beard for Catch Me If You Can. He was Leonardo DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
That was what it was for. It was for Halloween.
Oh.
Oh, he still has no beard now. It's been a minute
Correct.
since Halloween.
Oh, well, it's struggling to grow back, but it's there. It's there. It's working. You guys know the struggle. That shit's gonna be like a year before we see that beard back.
Maybe he likes it. Maybe he's like, oh, this is actually nice not having a beard.
I don't think he likes it at all. I think that man, that might have been one of the first times we've seen Conor McGregor insecure in the last 6 years. People shit all over him left and right. It was crazy.
That's fine. There'd be a great fight, man. Him against Chandler. It would be a huge fight. It would be a great fight. It would be must see. Let it headline a pay-per-view. Find another non-title fight to go into co-main.
Totally. It easily could, yeah.
That'd be awesome. All right, let's keep plowing on.
Yeah, do that and put Gaethje and Fiziev as a co-main or some shit. That'd be dope. Perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, another sad one, man. In the bantamweight division, Chris Gutierrez defeated Frankie Edgar by knockout via jumping knee. The official time 2:01 of round number 1. Omar, give us your reaction to the living legend Frankie Edgar going out like this.
I mean, this was probably one of the worst ones of the whole night, if we're being honest. They show him coming into the ring. They show his family. They show his kids. Everyone's there to see Frankie win. Everyone's there to see Frankie go out on top. And Frankie gets fucking murdered. I mean, it wasn't even... It was barely a fight, really.
Yeah.
It's not even something where you can walk away from that fight specifically and be like, at least Frankie put up a good one. No. That fight wasn't even long enough for that to really even be a thing. I felt bad for Chris Gutierrez because he does seem like the guy who also grew up watching Frankie Edgar, and now he had to be responsible for fucking Frankie Edgar up. And, it was what it was leading up to the fight, people counting him out and him being in his feelings about it. But I think once he knocked him out, I think he realized, oh, shit, I just knocked out Frankie Edgar. You know what I mean?
In his last fight.
I think it hit him a little bit different. He tried to pick Frankie Edgar up. Frankie Edgar was like, no, just don't do it.
Stop. Yeah, Mark Henry was like, go away.
Yeah. It was sad though, man. There were a lot of sad moments on this card, and this, for me personally, even more than the Adesanya one, really topped the cake for me.
Yeah, man. Mark, any thoughts on Frankie's last fight?
Yeah, this sucked. I said last week that at least Chris Gonzalez wasn't a big KO threat because his strikes don't really carry that kind of power. But when you throw a jump knee, anybody KO anybody with one of those. So
especially when you run your face into it.
Yeah,
he was kind of ducking down, kind of faking a shot, I think.
So that was definitely the low point of the evening. Tough to see Frankie go out like that in New York in his last fight. Like Omar said, with his family there. As soon as they showed his kids watching before the bell rang, I was like, oh my God, he's going to get knocked out, isn't he?
I said the same thing.
It's tough. It's tough to see how disappointed he was in the post-fight interview. You could tell he was really like, oh my God, I can't believe I just got knocked out. He was having a hard time digesting it, I think. But obviously an enormous moment for Chris Gutierrez, who fought a perfect fight, got a perfect result, fast-tracked himself to another big fight after, I think I had him ranked 32, 3, 4, something like that coming into this fight. He's been good. Don't get me wrong. He's 5-1, 6-1, whatever he was in the UFC. But he hadn't had that type of name yet to jump him into the mix, and he fucking jumps right into it now. So that was huge for him. And as for Frankie, he will be missed, of course. I wish he could have gone out differently. It's funny because if you're newer to MMA, you may not believe this, but at his peak, he was a guy who could not be hurt. It didn't matter what you hit him with. You hit him with the biggest shots you had, and he would keep coming, and he would break you. He was that guy. His pace was incredible. His footwork, his boxing, and, of course, most importantly, his wrestling. He would have fights, like his fight against Yair Rodriguez, that would make you feel uncomfortable because of how dominant his wrestling was. It would make you feel like you weren't watching a fair fight. So at his peak, Frankie was unbelievable. He's a legend. Of course, he took the lightweight belt off BJ Penn, who was my guy. beat him twice, went into the incredible series with Gray Maynard.
Incredible.
Then he did lose it to Benson Henderson, which I always thought was debatable if he should have lost it. But then even after that, drops to featherweight where he manages to beat everyone not named Jose Aldo for like 5 years until finally getting finished for the first time against Brian Ortega. And, of course, that's when everything starts going downhill and we start seeing a lot of Frankie Edgar getting finished, which sucks. But even now, to see Frankie Edgar fighting down at 135 at the end of his career, 135, and still almost always being the smaller man in the cage, and knowing that he once held the title 2 weight classes above that and couldn't be stopped or put out by anyone, sums up Frankie Edgar perfectly. He's a fighter's fighter. He's a guy who everyone looked up to, and he'll be missed in the cage. He was the man.
Yeah, man. Well said.
Thank you.
Make that a clip. Make that a clip. Oh, boy. Okay. Moving on down the line. Dan Hooker. Back in the win column, baby.
Can I just say real fast,
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to match up with Gutierrez.
Oh, my
Yeah,
God.
same.
Sorry.
I got one that I kind of like. It's a little random maybe, but I kind of like him and Cody Garbrandt. Cody needs a fight. The one with Ronnie Yaya keeps falling apart. I like that matchup. We get to see who's faster. They're both stupid fast. It's kind of like kicks and knees against boxing. So let's see who's faster and can finish the other.
Omar, you got any other names?
Mine was, I figured you got the narrative now that Chris Gutierrez is wrecking or may be the one to wreck the veterans. And so why not give a Sun Sao a shot? He's coming off of a win, right? He's coming off of a win against Victor Henry, a real good win. Gutierrez is now in the top 15. I don't believe a Sun Sao is anymore.
They ranked Gutierrez?
13.
Wow. I mean, fair. He beat Frankie Edgar.
Yeah. So Sun Sao is no longer ranked. That's could be interesting. It's a good name at minimum for Gutierrez to have on his resume. So I said, let's do it.
Yeah, man.
For sure. Now you may move to Dan.
Yes, now we may go. Okay. Dan Hooker back in the win column. A round 2 TKO over Claudio Puelles. Omar, give us your take on this performance by Hooker, getting it done with the TKO.
So you guys know I've talked up Claudio Puelles quite a bit every time he comes up now. Went to go see this with my brother-in-law, went to the house. This guy's really good. You guys should watch his submissions. It's really, really fantastic. This fucking guy spends 3 rounds throwing himself on the floor like an asshole. Made me look like an asshole. Right, 2 rounds, whatever it ended up being in the end. Made me look like an asshole because they're like, what is he doing? Is this how he normally fights? I was like, I've never seen Puelles fight like this ever in my life. I don't know what is happening here. I don't know what this kid is doing. This is the worst Claudio Puelles I've ever seen in my life. Great win for Dan Hooker, though. I mean, this is exactly what Dan Hooker needed to get back in the mix. For people to remember who Dan Hooker is. And I think we even said it last week, though, that this was a tall order for Puelles, and he may not have been able to pull it off. I don't know if the moment got to him. I don't really know what happened to him, to be honest, but he looked terrible. The approach to the fight was terrible. The execution of it was terrible. None of that is how I've ever seen him fight, ever. So something definitely happened. I don't know what it was. Dan Hooker took full advantage of it and looked fantastic doing so. So good win for Dan Hooker. Really disappointing performance for Puelles. Hopefully he gets another one where he can kind of set things straight and not go Ryan Hall on everybody. But there's not really much more you can say about what happened in that fight.
Mark, give us your thoughts of Dan Hooker getting back in the win column.
I loved seeing this from Dan Hooker. It really made me so happy to see him fight smart and composed and dangerous as we used to see from him. He was certainly in a couple tricky spots with these Imanari rolls from Puelles. But honestly, for me, that fight kind of looked exactly how I thought it would look. Maybe a few more Imanari rolls. I thought it'd maybe be a little more traditional takedown attempts, even though Puelles is not really that guy either. But that's kind of how I thought it would go. Like some weird scrambles, things Hooker would have to make sure he got himself out of, and then eventually he would just start stuffing things and hurt Puelles. And that's what he did. He navigated his way out of some weird spots, and he started to make Puelles pay. And it's tough with Puelles because when leg lock guys win, it's like, oh my God, like it looks like it's like magic what they just pulled off. But when they lose and their game doesn't work, it always looks bad. So it was a rough night for him. But Dan Hooker did a perfect job. He wore Puelles down. Puelles really started to get tired too, which was a little surprising. But he wore him down, and he brought him to a point where he was kind of just a sitting duck. Like Puelles was like, everything I'm doing is going badly, and he was almost just like sitting there like, I'm fucked. And Hooker waited for the perfect shot and finished him. So very happy to see him pick up a W.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Sticking with you, Mark, what do you think is next for Dan Hooker? Put on that matchmaker's hat, and what would you do next with him?
I'm going to get him back in the mix. As I've said before, I am not someone who has thought that Dan Hooker has fallen off necessarily. He just lost to an absolute murderer's row of crazy talented individuals. So I'm going to throw out a name that was actually said a few moments ago. I think Dan Hooker and Mateusz Gamrot would be a really fun fight. And I would like to reward Hooker a bit with a chance to kind of get back in that edge of the mix.
Wow. That's a crazy fight. I had to take a moment to process
the scrambles would probably be crazy in that fight,
too.
too.
Omar, any other suggestions for the Hangman, Dan Hooker?
Dan Hooker versus Jalen Turner, I think would be a fun fight.
Wow.
Yes, it would.
Also kind of still gets him back in the mix. Jalen Turner is in a good spot right now. One that I'm sure Dan Hooker would love to be in as far as the rankings are concerned. So let's do it.
Yep.
Jeez, man. Great. No easy fights. No easy fights in this division.
No.
Okay, let's keep going. On more of a bright note or a high note, Renato Moicano gets it done over Brad Riddell, getting it done by submission in the very first round. This was the featured bout on the prelims. By the way, he finished him by rear naked choke, the official time 3:20 of round number 1. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. Give us your take of Moicano's nice win and his spot on the mic after the fight.
Oh, God. The mic spot was unbelievable. They were saying, oh, this is the first time we've ever seen Moicano talk like this. He did the same shit last fight. Like, this is his shtick now. He takes that mic and he freaking takes full advantage of it. So I love it. This new the opened up personality of Renato Moicano is incredible. Give me more. But as for the fight, this thing was freaking dominant. Like, this might have been the closest fight on the card for me where I was like, man, like, I could see this go both ways. I don't know where to go. And I love Moicano. I've always said, like, he's an underrated guy. He's super dangerous. Yeah. I didn't see it looking quite as dominant as this. I mean, he looked dangerous as hell on the feet, which is where Brad Riddell's expertise lies. And Riddell seemed like he was struggling to figure Moicano out. Moicano was landing first. He was fast. He was slick. He was making Riddell miss. And then when we finally get into the grappling, it was like over before it even started. I mean, Riddell just gave him the choke. Like, he's in there posting. He doesn't even try to fight the hands at all. I don't know if he thought his chin was, like, tucked enough that he was like, oh, I'm good right now. And then he just wasn't good. It was weird looking for sure, but never even tried to fight the hands, pull his hands off, nothing. So it was a weird ending. But Moicano takes him out with ease. And he is a guy who, I know he just had the loss to RDA, but it was very short notice. To me, he's a guy who feels like his entire game is peaking right now. So I hope he gets a big one next.
Yeah, man. Omar, what were your thoughts?
This one was also sad. I had Brad Riddell winning, but he also didn't look like himself in that fight. I was very vocal watching this fight when Brad Riddell was not fighting hands. I was yelling inside of a house where my mother-in-law was sleeping, and she woke up to me yelling, "What the fuck are you doing? Why are you not fighting hands?" So, had to adjust certain things when I watch fights nowadays. Point is, Moicano did work. Brad Riddell didn't seem to be in the right headspace to fight. We'll get into it when we get to the sphere, but it was a fantastic performance from Moicano. One I definitely would not have seen coming. I never would have picked round one submission. It just I wouldn't have done it.
Poor Riddell, man.
Yeah.
I just pulled this up real quick. Riddell came into the UFC as a pro 6-1, then wins his first 4 fights in the UFC. He goes 4-0 in the UFC, and then he loses his next 3, and he gets finished 3 times in a row. By Fiziev, he got knocked out. He got subbed by Turner, and now he's getting subbed by Moicano, man. He's such a talented guy.
One of the things he was talking about leading up to this fight was it's the first time he's ever lost 2 back-to-back fights before. You know, he's lost before, but he's never lost 2 fights in a row before, and I think that really seems like it took a toll on him, and now it's 3, and I'm sure it's gotten even worse. So, it did get worse. So, like I said, we'll talk about it when we get to the sphere.
Yeah, man. Let's match up Renato Moicano. Where does he go next, Omar, at lightweight?
Hang on, sorry. Why can I never find these things? Oh, because I keep looking for Moicano and not Caniero. Yeah. So for Moicano, I think you definitely need to give him a spot, right? What did he take the RDA fight on? Like 14 days notice, 15 days notice, something.
In the octagon, he said 4. Was it that tight? I don't remember, but that's what he said in the post-fight interview. He said, 4 days notice, I was drinking beer in Brazil. That's what he said.
No, he didn't say it. He yelled it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I drink beer in Brazil.
Moicano. Everything was third person.
Yeah.
You definitely got to give Moicano somebody though, right? Like you can't shaft this kid. He's got to win now. He did you guys a solid. He looked great doing it. I mean, we can give him Tony Ferguson, and we can try to see if Tony Ferguson lives. And see how that works out.
Not bad.
A lot of people look booked right now. It might clear up. It might make more sense to book or to kind of look at where the landscape is at the end of the year and then see where you go from there. But if I had to choose right now, I think Tony Ferguson is where I go.
Interesting. Tony Ferguson. Wow. Mark, you got a name for us?
Yeah, so I was thinking of the name that Omar actually just threw out in the last one for Hooker. I was thinking Jalen Turner for Moicano.
Wow.
I know they've both kind of recently broken through to the rankings, and normally I try to keep 2 guys like that away from each other who kind of just got there. I'd rather than fight someone else. But with what Omar said, the way lightweight's booked right now, you know, the top guys are 2 top. The rest of the guys are kind of booked. You know, let's just make it happen. Test them against each other, and we'll see who's the true top-level threat that should be stepping up.
Oh, man, I love that fight. And I'm a little sad that it's happening this early in their careers.
Well, I don't know if it's happening. It doesn't just happen.
Well, yeah. Yes. So I would be sad. But it would be a great fight. Okay, let's move on. One more, boys, of breakdown, and then we will jump into our lightning round. So at a catch weight of 206.6 pounds, Ryan Spann.
You could just say light heavyweight division.
Fucking crazy.
Thank you. Thank you for that permission. And in the light heavyweight division, Ryan Spann dusted Dominick Reyes by knockout with a jab. Literally with a jab. A power jab, but a jab.
Yes.
At 1 minute and 20 seconds of the very first round. Omar, give us your impressions of this 80 seconds of fighting and how it ended up for Dominick Reyes. I'm
not surprised. I mean, I told you guys I don't trust Dominick Reyes' chin. He hasn't taken very much damage in his career throughout, but the damage he has taken in the short amount of time he's taken it is not great. And I don't think it goes backwards. Like, it's not like he's gonna get the chin back. Like, it's kind of is what it is at this point. The miles are there. So I'm really not thrilled to watch him continuously get knocked out. Spoiler, he's already talked about how he's going to be back, that he's not done. Didn't enjoy reading that. But like I said, man, Ryan Spann is somebody who I think has had potential. And I think he showed just a glimmer of it this past weekend. So good for him. I hope Reyes figures out something, because I can't keep watching him just get laid out like that. It's not great.
I mean, you got to bear in mind, this is a guy who went undefeated into his title fight with Jon Jones. Jones beat him, a fight that a lot of people thought that Reyes won. It turned into a bit of a scrap, a bit of a war. Blachowicz TKO'd him, and he kind of, he clanged him, but it wasn't terrible. To me, it was the Prochazka knockout. Prochazka took a piece of him with that spinning elbow, man. He took a piece of him.
Yeah.
The Jan fight was bad. The Jan fight broke his face. The Jan fight was not great. Like, it was, I guess, more competitive than the Yuri fight, maybe more competitive than the Brian Spann fight.
Yeah, but getting progressively worse.
Right, but like more. They were all terrible. They all broke his face. One way or another, his face left out of there leaked. It was bad.
Yeah. Anyway,
Jon Jones is the only one who didn't really beat the shit out of him. Everybody else that has beat him has apparently just wailed on him left and right. So it's not great.
Mark, give us your impressions of the minute 20 seconds of fighting and how it ended up.
Ryan Spann makes the biggest statement of his career thus far. He came out like he did not care at all who Dom Reyes was. He seemed to have no concern for what was coming back at him. He walked Reyes down. He was first in every exchange. The speed was a big difference. And, yeah, I'm not sure what to think about Dom Reyes at this point. I know, as Omar mentioned, he did say he plans to keep going, but not sure if the chin is going to cooperate with that plan, so we will see. I did say last week I'd pick Reyes one more time until he gave me a reason not to. I am certainly done doing that at this point. But, yeah, good for Ryan Spann. Huge win, signature win for him.
Yeah, man, absolutely. All right, let us – oh, you want to match them up real quick, just Spann?
Sure. If Anthony Smith and Jamal Hill is truly in the works, as has been rumored, then that leaves my guy Nikita Krylov kind of sitting there without a fight. And here's that fight. That's where I would go. I think that'd be a scrap. And I'll just throw in real quick, since Reyes is going to keep fighting, I think put him and Gustafsson in a cage. Let's figure out who's the deadest dead guy.
I was going to say, Jesus.
One of them gets to win and keep going, and we get to say, wow, look at him, he got to win.
Yeah, whoever touches who first is going to win.
Yep.
Pretty much at that point. Okay. Excuse me, Omar. My apologies. Any other names you want to throw out for either of these guys, of matchups you'd want to see?
Heavyweight is unfortunately pretty booked up. Nikita Krylov is pretty much the only person that's not. Volkanovski is here as well, but that's because he's still recovering from the loss from Nikita Krylov. So I'm fine with Nikita Krylov for Ryan Spann. I absolutely hate that fight of old men.
Why?
Like
what are you talking about?
It just seems like both of these guys are like two 1950s cars that are all junkered up and used. And
isn't that a good reason to have them fight each other?
Right.
One of them loses and we make them go away. The other one, we're like, all right, you get one more chance.
They both need to go away.
Okay. You don't want another fight for either of them.
I don't want to see either one of them get fucked up again. They're not even competitive fights anymore. They're just going in there getting laid out. That's just not fun.
Okay. Fair. It's fair. Fair enough.
Yes.
I was going to make an analogy to Frankie of like, don't you wish that Frankie fought not a younger up and coming guy?
I mean, we didn't even touch on that. Was there ever a more perfect example of why he should have been fighting Dominick Cruz?
Yeah.
Like, at least we would have made it to the bell. Like,
we talked about it a long time ago that we thought that Frankie shouldn't have been fighting this kid. That it should have been somebody, regardless of the fact that Chris Gutierrez is younger and up and comer and all this stuff. The name, like the prestige behind the fight, you lose something behind it. It was almost like a lose-lose for Frankie, because even if he beat Gutierrez, then what the fuck was the point? He just wanted to fight in MSG, which I understand that, but it means nothing. It carries nothing for the legacy. And in fact, it only, if nothing else, does something like this, where he gets knocked out in vicious form, and it's just, almost like a stain on the legacy. So it doesn't take away from it so much, but it's there. That destruction is part of it now at this point, instead of a competitive fight between, a legendary Dom Cruz and Frankie Edgar, and a fight that should have happened however long ago that never did and now can, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seemed like a waste, man.
I agree.
All right, boys, it is time. Let us go through this lightning round. In the women's flyweight division, Erin Blanchfield defeated Molly McCann by submission via Kimura at 3 minutes 37 seconds of the very first round. Omar, go first.
Man, if I have a daughter, I hope she can beat someone's ass like Erin Blanchfield, because my God, I think Mark texted us and said she sunned her. No, wait, she daughtered Molly McCann. It was the most ridiculous performance. I mean, I felt bad for Molly, because Molly came in with all that hype, all of those moments in her last couple fights, the Drake thing, the this and that, and just got manhandled. Absolutely handled from bell to bell. The sub at that point almost seemed merciful, if we're being 100% honest. So, good on Erin Blanchfield. I mean, that's exactly the performance you wanted against somebody high profile like that.
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to tell you guys, right? Like, a lot of people wanted to believe in Molly McCann, but unless she happened to clip Blanchfield like nearly immediately, there was no way that she was surviving grappling in that fight. Blanchfield is just a machine, and that was about as dominant as it gets. And just a quick aside, I've heard this point people make before of like that they feel like the UFC is not great at building stars these days. And whether you agree or disagree with that, this one is such an example of like, what the fuck are you doing, UFC? Like, you have this budding star that kind of came out of nowhere. It happened coincidentally. She gets associated with Drake. She's all over to the TV, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, I know what we should do. Let's put her with Erin Blanchfield. Like, you literally can't think of a worse style matchup. Like, you knew she was losing that fight. Like, I don't know who makes that decision and then who was like, oh, boom, yeah, agree, great idea. Like, some things don't make any sense.
Yeah, man. I'm a Blanchfield fan. At first, I was a little butthurt because she beat Miranda Maverick, and I'm a big Miranda Maverick. Excuse me, it's the wine. I'm a big Maverick fan. So I was like, God damn it, Blanchfield, I hate you. But now I'm like, oh, I love her because she's so good. Yeah. Very patient striking and very aggressive ground game.
Nasty. Yep.
Oh, my God. I felt so bad for Molly McCann.
Yep.
She just got mauled. Okay, let's move on.
Mauled.
Well done, Erin Blanchfield. Go MK Muay Thai in New Jersey. In the who's next? In the middleweight division, Andre Petrosky defeats Wellington Turman by decision 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Mark, go first.
Wrestling, as good as Turman can be with the jits, the level of wrestling that Petrosky brings was too good, and it was the difference here, which is what I thought would be the case. He was able to lean on it when he needed. He was able to control, use it to reverse positions, and maybe it wasn't his most impressive win he's ever had, but it was a solid win nonetheless. He moves to 4-0 in the UFC, and he keeps moving up the ranks.
Omar, take it.
Yeah, I didn't think the wrestling would be sort of the ultimate factor to really bring Turman down to his knees. I thought Turman would be a little bit more well-rounded than that, but turns out that's not the case. Either that or Petrosky's wrestling is just that good. Either way, it was a good performance from Petrosky. Good win. Definitely a good name to have on his resume for sure.
Yeah, man. All right. In the lightweight division, Matt Frevola, the steamroller, defeated Atman Azaitar by knockout at 2:30 of round number 1. Omar, go first.
Ah, damn, we got this one all wrong. I mean, this man, if I don't even know if he ever has, but this was a steamroller performance. This is probably the definition of being steamrolled.
Yes.
A fantastic performance. I mean, the accuracy on the punches was pinpoint. The power was there. I don't know if this is a one-shot deal, if this is, him coming into his own. But this was a fantastic performance from Frevola, and he needs more of that. More of this, for sure.
Mark.
Matt Frevola, man, the dude is just a gamer. Like, he loses some of these too, of course, as he did in his last one with Terrence McKinney, but he comes in and he puts it all on the line every time. So good for him, and he pulls it off here. And obviously we were all on a Zaitar. I think there was a lot of reason to be on a Zaitar. I think the 2-year layoff might have played a large factor because I thought he looked really weird and slow. I don't know what was up. He just looked kind of stuck in the mud to me. So I'm not sure that was the best Atman Zaitar that we were expecting to really see in there. But for Frevola to not even use an ounce of wrestling and just straight up KO Atman Zaitar in a striking contest is a pretty awesome result for him. So well done.
Okay, in the women's strawweight division, Karolina Kowalkiewicz defeated Silvana Gomez Juarez by unanimous decision. Mark, sticking with you, give us your take.
This was a good scrap. It was a bit back and forth. Honestly, a bit hard to score live. I did think live that Karolina had won it. I haven't gone back to rewatch, but it was a close fight. Karolina looked pretty solid, honestly, and of course, the fight that I said would either end in a Karolina sub or a Silvana KO goes to a decision, because why not?
Of course. Omar, take it.
Yeah, I think I texted you guys this while the fight was going on, but Gomez Juarez cannot be in the UFC with that ground game. It can't go on that much longer. Her ground game is absolutely terrible. And to her credit, she survived. But I think anybody with any real solid ground experience, I think tears up Gomez Juarez. So hopefully she figures that out, or she's going to have a real rough time in the UFC going forward, and she already has. So, oh, wait. I think she got cut.
I was just going to say she's 1-3. I wonder if she even still has a job.
I think she got cut.
Yeah,
okay.
There you go.
All right, moving on. In the featherweight division, Michael Trizano gets it done over Choi Swung Woo by knockout. Official time, 4:51 of round number 1. Omar, take it.
So this was a wild little last fight. I can't remember the last time in the UFC specifically 2 guys have punched each other at the same time and knocked down knocked each other down at the same time as well. So that was new. And I thought Sung-Woo Choi was doing okay up until he started getting tagged with left hooks. Wasn't doing anything about it. Just kept getting tagged with left hooks. So he went down, man. Trizano kept just spamming those left hooks, and they kept landing. And I mean, it was a fight that was fun to watch. But those two have the worst defense I've ever seen in a fight. I mean, there was hardly any defense in that fight at all. So,
didn't you say on our text thread that looked like did you say a bar fight?
It did. It looked like a street fight. It looked like somebody outside of somewhere they just got into a street fight and just wanted to knock each other out. Like I said, fun, great time, not the most technical fight from either one of them.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, this was a silly fight. And with the first punches in the entire fight landing and causing a double knockdown, pretty much told you all you needed to know about how this thing was going to go. But, Sung-Woo Choi is a 50-50, kill-or-be-killed fighter, and Saturday was the wrong side of the coin for him. I know I said that I don't believe Trizano is more than a lower-level lightweight, and obviously he breaks through a bit here. So for the time being, I guess I'm wrong there, but I honestly still don't believe he is. I think Choi's standing is maybe a little inflated because he happened to knock out Julian Erosa, which I think maybe was more of a result of that way he fights, that kill-or-be-killed craziness, and he just happened to catch Erosa. So I actually think neither of these guys are really anything too special, but they did give us a hell of an entertaining fight on Saturday, so for the moment, I will let them have a little bit of shine. But yeah, good on Trezano. He went out, he bit down, he took shots, he scrapped, and he gets a beautiful finish.
All right, in the bantamweight division, Montel Jackson defeats Julio Arce by UD. Mark, sticking with you, give us your take.
This one pretty much how I thought. As good of Arce is, as much of a gamer as he is, I said that unless his technique was just noticeably better, I didn't think he'd be able to outweigh all the advantages that Jackson had, and he couldn't. Jackson leaned on the size, the reach, the wrestling, the power. It was too much in his corner. It was a close fight for a bit, but Jackson just started to pull away, so nice win for him.
Omar?
Yeah, this one sucked. I had Julio. I picked Julio to win, but he got pretty dominated in this fight. It's rough to watch him lose fights like this because I do think he's the more technical fighter, but I think he just gets... There are just attributes that I don't think he can get around with his technique. And so it sucks to watch him get edged out consistently now.
Okay. Last one in the light heavyweight division, Carlos Ulberg defeats Nikolai Negumereanu by knockout in the very first round. Omar, staying with you, what's your take?
That power from Ulberg is scary. Absolutely terrifying, man. He clipped Nikolai for a second there, and he was kind of out of it, kind of not, tried to get back up, tried to get his composure back, and then Ulberg just lands one more that just sends him flying, and that's all she wrote. Ulberg is an absolute monster. If he can keep that conditioning in play, that didn't really work. It didn't really come into play in this fight with it being a round 1 KO, but if he can keep that conditioning in play, he's going to be a real problem in that division, 100%.
Yeah, man. Mark, take us home.
Yeah, that felt like the full version of Carlos Ulberg unlocked, and that's a scary man. For Nikolai Negumereanu, a guy who puts a pace and pressure on everybody, to not even be able to find him in there while just getting picked apart says a lot. So Carlos Ulberg fought a flawless fight, and that KO was nasty.
Nice. And that does it, boys, for this week's Lightning Round and our recap of UFC 281.